I'm not gay, but hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Canine Cannibalism. Today, we are going to be taking a look at Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Brite. The book is 240 pages, broken up into a myriad of chapters, and it's about a serial killer who goes to the USA and meets another serial killer, and they then do some bad things together. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist. We're going to be doing a few different things in this video. First and foremost, we're going to be doing the trigger warning, cover all the stuff that may trigger people so that they know what they're getting into when they pick up the book. Going to be doing a review, a plot summary, and then I got a couple of things to say after that that are like spoilery review stuff. You know how it is if you've seen one of these videos before. So, without further ado, let's get right into a trigger warning. If you were to pick up a copy of Exquisite Corpse and read it, you would find all of the following. First and foremost, your gore, your torture, and your mutilation, and your death. Some pretty heavy-handed stuff when it comes to torture and mutilation in this one, so not for the squeamish. And then with that, you've also got cannibalism, and one scene of intense, graphic suicide. And then also you have some sexual abuse throughout the book, large amount of necrophilia and necrophilic actions, and remembering scenes of necrophilia from the past, just a lot of having sex with dead bodies. You also have rape, one very violent, semi-violent scene of rape, and then just constant mention of sexual assault and rape. Then you also have, and this is the first time I'm including this just because of how important it is in the book, you have some homophobia, some really, not like in all of the other books that I've read where they use like slurs and stuff, but like kicking your kid out of your house because he's gay and insinuating that he may have molested his younger siblings because he's gay, that kind of stuff, that ignorant stuff that is very real, and it can be very upsetting. So just thought I'd include that. And then also you have general filth, which in this case is just cum eating, some stuff with vomit, nothing like, well, it is a little bit sexual. So some vomit stuff, and then there's one scene with pus. And that's it for that. So if, as far as books that I've reviewed thus far go, that's pretty tame. But it doesn't need a lot, but it is still very extreme and depressing and disturbing. So let's get into some just general review stuff. I liked the book a lot. I really, really did. However, the title, Exquisite Corpse, if you can imagine what a writing style based off of that title would be like, it is exactly that. It is extremely wordy. At times it feels pretentious and hard to follow, not out of an inability to grasp the setting and the concepts, but because it is just so horridly wordy, which is both a blessing and a curse. It sometimes is incredibly poetic. The prose is beautiful, and I love it so much, the way that the author describes the settings and the things that are happening, and sometimes it is just a chore. And there were many, many times where I read a line and I was like, holy fuck, that's so over the top that it's kind of funny, just with how it is written. It is like the author tried really, really hard to be poetic, and maybe naturally they are poetic in their writing, but it feels like sometimes they tried way too hard. But overall, I would say the writing style is very nice. It's just very, very wordy. Some of the, mainly one of the scenes in the beginning, we get some exposition near the beginning of the book, and some of how the character develops I mean, it's exposition, so you have to give it some leeway for being exposition, but some of how the main character gets developed in the beginning of the book seems extremely rushed. Especially, there are descriptions of his mental state jumping back and forth between two different things, like two different states, and it's described in a way that it's supposed to have happened over like months, but it's written in a way that makes it seem very back and forth, um, and just it just jumps a little too fast for my liking, and that's pretty much those two things, the wordiness and the that are like my only two complaints. I'm gonna start fucking gushing grannies about this book now. This shit is great. All right, don't take what I just said as like this book is mediocre at best. I love this book. It is wonderful to read, despite its wordiness at certain junctures. It is the story it tells is incredible, I would like to say. The way that the author gets you attached to these deplorable people and then simultaneously want them to win and lose is very interesting. The two main characters are serial killers, or two of the main characters are serial killers, and the other two are not. And you want them to simultaneously get away with what they're doing while also getting punished for what they are doing. And it's this like intense, like, I mean, I was reading it and it was pulling me back and forth. I was like, oh, but I want him to get away with it, but also he really shouldn't, you know? I would say that's a hand fucking round of applause to the author for writing the characters in such a way that I almost feel bad when their plans don't come to fruition, but simultaneously feel bad when their plans do come to fruition. So just that was incredible. Also, and now I am not gay. I am not in tune with gay culture and subculture. However, um, the way that the author portrays HIV and AIDS, it's a very large part of one of the subplots throughout the book. The way that the author portrays the way the HIV and AIDS ravages the gay community, I feel is beautiful and poetic. Again, I am not intimately familiar with that era of gay culture and the strife that these people were going through when the AIDS epidemic was happening. But the way that the author writes it as as this horrifically distressing and disturbing thing for these men that are infected, it's it's beautiful and awful at the same time. The way that it's almost like a spit in the one final spit in the face from a society that has already cast these men out. I found it incredible to read. Um, this book is not just random gore and shit. This is very much it's closer to normal literature. It's less splatter punky, but it is still very extreme and distressing. And it's much closer to something like Offspring, where it's just very good to read and it's not too over the top. I liked it a lot. Speaking of the AIDS stuff, like I mean, and just some more testament to the character development here. There was a character who we didn't know very well, right? And he has AIDS, and he essentially says to his friends, "It's my time to go. Will you please watch me?" His brother died, etc., etc. And he takes them out, and I mean, this is light spoilers, but I'm not. It doesn't really matter. And he blows his brains out, right? And just the way that it is written, even though we don't know much about this man, was incredibly impactful. Just the sheer ferocity and finality of the act was. God, I sound like a fucking book critic. I'm not a book critic. I like this book. the finality of the act and the ferocity of the way that it was written was extremely impactful to me. And that whole subplot of like the HIV/AIDS stuff was very interesting to read, and I appreciated it very much. That's pretty much all I have to say for a spoiler-free review. So let's get into probably the main reason most of you are here, the plot summary. Massive spoiler warning. So, Andrew Compton, I think it takes place in 1988, I believe. I want to say 1988 because his crime spree lasted 11 years, and I think it started in 77. Andrew Compton is in prison. He killed 23, I believe, young boys and then kept their bodies. His nickname is the Eternal Host. He kept them in his bed until disposing of them. He eventually got caught. He wound up in prison. Because of his necrophilic tendencies, the book isn't exactly extremely realistic in its depictions of things. This is more spiritual and occult-esque, but it doesn't take away from the book at all. It's just an interesting shift. It's not exactly my favorite part of the book, but I understand why the author did it for the most part. Just thought I'd put that out there before I say what the hell I'm talking about. He detaches himself from his body, essentially killing himself, but he's still like tethered to his body, kind of. So he's dead enough. He kills himself enough by just willing himself dead that doctors can't find his pulse and stuff. It's very occult-esque. It's very odd. And he says that he like practiced for years not knowing that he would be doing this, but he would dress himself up as a corpse and pretend to be dead and slow his heart and lungs as much as possible in order to feel more like his boys or whatever. By the way, they call their victims their boys in this book, so I'm going to refer to them as that. Anyway, so he could feel more like his boys or feel more like a corpse and get pleasure from that. So he detaches himself from his mortal coil enough that he is pronounced dead, and then he rises from the dead. He brings himself back as he's about to be autopsied. He kills the doctor and the doctor's helper who are autopsying him. He escapes London and goes to Georgia. And then we are following a man named Jay Byrne, who also kills boys, and he's infatuated with this kid named Tran and wants Tran to pose for his photos, but he doesn't want to kill Tran because Tran's a local. Tran gets kicked out by his parents after his dad finds that he was in a relationship with a gay man, obviously, if you're gay, whatever. In a relationship with a man. Father kicks him out. He's nowhere to go. Goes to Jay's house. They have passionate a passionate cocksucking fest and stuff, and then Jay kicks him out because he realizes that if he fucks Tran, he will kill him, and he doesn't want to kill a local. Andrew arrives in Georgia and then realizes he wants to go to New Orleans. He goes to New Orleans. He meets Jay. They fall in love at like first sight. They realize that they're both serial killers, and Andrew wants Tran and wants to kill Tran, and Jay is a cannibal, and Andrew is slightly obsessed with the idea of cannibalizing because Jay has been talking about it so much, and he wants to eat Tran. And so Jay brings back a boy to the house to try to feed Andrew some human flesh because Andrew is interested. The boy is riddled with... They kill him and they cut him open, and the boy is riddled with cancer or lesions or something from the drugs he was doing, I think is what they say it was. And so obviously they're not going to eat him because tainted meat, whatever. And then Andrew rapes Jay and essentially dominates him. And it's written essentially that he is now the master of Jay. It was very like dominatrix-esque, like very BDSM esque. They kidnap Tran and kill Tran, and then the Tran's ex-boyfriend, who we've been following off and on, who's got AIDS, he ran a pirated radio talk show where he was doing anti-straight people propaganda stuff. It was very interesting to listen to and read. He comes and tries to rescue Tran at the last second, and slits Jay's throat after they have killed Tran. He's too late. Andrew stands over him, essentially dominating him. Luke leaves. He falls off the wagon and starts shooting up heroin again. And Andrew catches a train out of New Orleans out into the American desert. And that's where the book ends. With Luke shooting up heroin and Andrew essentially willing himself back toward near death so that he can sleep for his journey. And the reason he actually does that is because he ate part of Jay's body, and he wants to assimilate Jay into himself as much as possible so that he can so that Jay can become part of him. There was a lot of talk throughout the book of the boys being a part of them, staying. That's why Andrew kept his boys. That's why Jay eats his boys, is to keep them a part of themselves. And so that's how the book ends. There is one last thing I have to say that is like review-wise that involves spoilers, and it's the last line, or really the last real line, I guess, where Luke is shooting up heroin, and it's the epilogue, and while we are getting descriptions of him shooting up heroin, we are getting descriptions of Jay and Tran's bodies rotting and coalescing together, and it's very weird and poetic. And then Luke wakes up after shooting up heroin and realizes he's going to live, and he wants to live another year or whatever, even though AIDS is killing him. He wants to write another book. And then he looks up at his ceiling and begins to talk. And that's the last real line before we get another description of Jay and Tran coalescing. And I don't fully get the meaning behind that, because it was never really, Luke's a writer, but it was never really indicated that he talks through his books before writing them. So maybe I'm thinking about it too hard, and it's just hinting at that he's the one out loud saying the descriptions of Jay and Tran coalescing into mush. But I don't fully understand why he would do that. There's probably a metaphor there, or a connection to something that I just skimmed over that I'm missing, but that honestly threw me for a loop, and I was very confused. And again, that might just be the very poetic nature of the story, and I'm just thinking about it way too hard, but I don't know. That's about all I have to say to you today. I don't really have much to talk about with this book in general. You heard my complaints, you heard my praises. My praises far outweigh my complaints. I would highly recommend you go and buy this book. I will leave a URL in the description, as I always do, so that you can go and buy this book. As I always say, everything I said in this video is my opinion, except for, the stuff that's factual, like the things that happen in the book and the trigger warning. That stuff's all in the book. That stuff's factual. At least to the best of my ability, that stuff is factual. But go form your own opinions. It's always great. Always great to form your own opinions. Don't just blindly trust what I am saying. Use me as a jumping off point, but if it sounds interesting and you have some regrets or some hesitance based on what I've said so far, maybe just go buy the book and see for yourself, It's always great. I like pushing traffic to these books so that other people read them, and I don't just suffer alone, or in this case, it's the opposite of suffer. I'm too fucking tired to think of an antonym for suffer. Alone. Go buy the book. Like the video if you like the video. Leave a comment and I'll respond to your comment. If you dislike the video, and leave a comment and tell me why you dislike the video. If it's the camera quality, I understand. I'm working on that. I tried things with OBS and camo on my phone today. Didn't work. Too much lag. I'm going to get a GoPro soon. Probably it will work. It'll be fine. We'll do good. I mean, that's about it. See ya.